Hello Sarah, would you like to first of all introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Sarah Hendry, I'm the Defra Policy Director for Floods and Water.
Sarah, we're sitting here in Nobel House. Will you be sad to leave this place?
I started work in Defra on the 17th of April 1989. Well, it wasn't Defra, it was math in those days, but it was in this building, and I came in through the tubes in the front door and thought, my goodness, what have I got myself into?
Can you tell me what data-driven Defra means to you?
I would have fallen into the trap of thinking data-driven Defra means that we release lots and lots and lots of sets of data, and that's all there is to it. But I've since thought about it a bit more, and I realise potentially it's a lot more fundamental than that to how we do business.
How is it more fundamental? Is it about how we use data, or is it more about how we think about the fundamentals of how we approach data to start off with?
So I think one example for me is going back to a few years ago where when we were developing the latest round of Common Agricultural Policy implementation, we were really challenging ourselves to build delivery and the practicalities of delivery and the costs of delivery into the way that we approached all of the decision making. And I suppose my model for what data-driven Defra might mean is very similar, that you take data and you think about it at the very birth of the policy, if you like, the very earliest stages, and think about what can data do for you, what are your data needs, and actually how might data transform the way that you're thinking about this policy area.
What is the first step towards data informing a policy area?
So I think the very first step is probably quite a classic thing from a policymaker's point of view, which is that you gather up all of the data that you have about the area that you are developing your policy on, and you use it in helping to define what it is you need to do. I think the next step, or the slightly more sophisticated step for me, which we haven't really tried yet to my knowledge, is actually inviting colleagues in who can say to us, here's what we think data could do for you, rather than here's your evidence and use it to build your policy. Have a rather more radical approach to data and say, well, if you are trying, for example, to get a group of people together at catchment level to think about how they could tackle flooding in a different way, how might data either be useful in getting engagement from those people, how might it drive the way they think about it, how might it actually lead you to think about different approaches to solving that problem.
You mentioned colleagues there, but then you also mentioned a wider group of people, bringing them together to look at the problem at a catchment level. How wide do you think that group needs to go?
I think it could potentially go as wide as you could imagine. So anybody potentially has an interest in solving the problem could be part of that, could bring their data to bear on it. So I don't start from a point of view that it needs to be us going away in a secret huddle and thinking about that. I would have thought, in principle, that the wider range of people you have there, particularly people who might be the users of data generated or might need to use the data in order to deliver the policy on the ground, they ought to be involved from the outset.
Do you think there's any particular thing that Defra can do to kind of enable that innovation among that group?
I think in order to enable that innovation to happen, there's probably a process of education, and I think that there's probably also a process of education in our teams as well, because I think we're probably still liable to think of data as something that's there and we use in a sort of evidence sense. So you probably need to have some fairly open sessions, workshops, just introducing people to the sort of data that either is available or could be generated, and getting them to think really imaginatively about how that might be used or how it might help. Otherwise I think people will come with the sort of preconceptions that I've got about this, and it won't be as productive as it might be.
And finally, what impact will this have on people living in flood-prone areas once Defra has become data-driven?
In a sense, you don't know until you try it. It could have unimaginable consequences. It could be that transformative thing that really helps to convince people, for example, that they should take steps to protect their own property and install things which at present they don't really want to put in their houses, the sort of protection measures that are rather visible and they think might lower the value of the property. But if we could find some data-related way to unlock their willingness to do that, that can make a transformative difference to how we think about flood risk and people's peace of mind.
So there's a role there as well for communicating data
Yes.
to the public.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I haven't always worked in this building. I've worked in other government buildings as well, but I've probably spent the majority of my time here. And yes, in one sense, I will be sad to leave it. And when you go around Nobel House, there are lots and lots of little features, and there are sculptures, stained glass, people's heads, you don't know who they are. And so that's why I've started my Twitter hashtag of Nobel Nostalgia, because I think as we approach leaving the building, people will start to get quite nostalgic and want to share that. But actually I'm quite excited about the possibilities that new bespoke accommodation, modern accommodation will have to how we can work together. So sad, yes, but actually I'm quite excited about it.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.